The other day, you had a super interesting tweet is focusing on S19 XPs, and you're basically explaining that these, very, very new gen mining rigs could basically act as kind of like a hedge on further downside in the price of Bitcoin, or at least the market value of these machines might not fall the same amount if Bitcoin, just rips to or gets hit hard to 10K. Can you like explain your thought process on that, or why that would be the case?
Yeah. Um, and so I kind of, that was a stretch of a tweet because I'm not sure if it'll happen, but based on evidence from past cycles looking at machine price and mining economics, it's very clear that high efficiency machines move less with downturns in economics. And so if Bitcoin price say crashes by 50%, you'll see a huge sell-off in old generation machines, S9s, S17s. They'll go down to basically being worthless because an S9 you can't mine with it, sub 1.5 cent is what it takes to run it. So they basically become, heaters. Whereas the new generation machines definitely move less on both downside and upside as well. So that's definitely the evidence is there. But I kind of took that a step further, saying, okay, if we break certain resistance lines in terms of hash price, it may be the case that only the top efficiency machines can mine. And all these people who set up mining businesses, have investors, that they've got into mining, will need to go to the highest efficiency machine in order to keep mining, or else they'll have to exit the industry altogether. For example, like a Bitmain S19J Pro, which is considered almost top of the line, you need under 8 cent power to run that profitably. If your host charges you 10 cents, you got to turn that off, or find a new host. And so those types of market participants, I think, could potentially flee to the S19 XP or the M50S or the new Avalon A13 series that was announced this morning, and really kind of flock to those. So we could get into a really interesting dynamic where if the price of the hash price decreases, so mining economics decrease, certain machine models could actually increase. But that's a hypothesis. I guess we'll wait to see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I generally agree with that idea. And I think that, like, if that does happen and like hash price just gets obliterated, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone that owns like older mid gen and like S19J Pros will be buying XPs. It only takes like a small group of those people to buy XPs to really like put a bid in for XPs and prevent them from going down, I think.
That's a good point. People like there's a very high correlation between machine prices and the price of Bitcoin and hash price, but also it's a supply and demand market. That's how the price of everything's set. So if for whatever reason supply becomes constrained, maybe the US sanctions certain components of Bitmain's process or whatnot, or certainly with Canaan and SMIC, it's a bigger concern. There could be just like a shortage of new generation machines, and a shortage of supply will skyrocket the price.
Yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts on this idea. Over time, we've kind of seen ASICs commoditize, quote unquote, where the next gen rig is more efficient than the previous gen rig, but it's not like magnitudes more efficient. Do you think that that trend will continue? And if so, or if not, do you think that the rigs that are released today will they be able to last longer and maybe maintain their value for a longer period of time?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a theme of like people predicting like Moore's law breaking, basically like our improvements on efficiency and chip size will decrease over time. I think that's the case for almost everything in life. It's very like when you build a big company, it's very hard to grow at 200% a year. But if you're a startup and it's your first year of operation, 200% is doable. And so when we saw kind of the evolution of ASICs, from the Bitmain S1 all the way to the S9, like it was just like a steady fall in power usage per output of compute. So it's certainly the case where that percentage of gain each year is going down as a percentage. Um, but I do think that we will continue to innovate, and so as long as you have the hypothesis that the Bitcoin price will increase over the next 10 years, hash price will also increase. And so in that case, people will be incentivized to build better and better machines. But I do agree with the thesis that they will steadily decline in terms of, how much better they are every generation. In terms of how long they last, that's an interesting concept. I mean, from a hardware perspective, we realize now that it's very dependent on a machine. An S9 lasted 5, 6 years before you started seeing like mass failure rates of them. So it's very durable, whereas S17 series, like, could barely last 6 months. It's hard to say where the XPs fall in that. I would lean towards the former, just given, Bitmain's really stepped up its manufacturing game and learned from a lot of the mistakes from the 17 series. But there's always a chance that we see mass failures of the XPs. We've never run that type of chip before at that hot of a temperature in operating climates like Texas. And so there's a lot of like new variables that we're introducing that could change the outcome of machine longevity.